Hello again, everyone, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Into the Composer's Mind. I took a day off yesterday, and so I'm back at it today. I mean, I took a day off from recording, but certainly not a day off from composing. So it's time to catch up on a few things as to what I've been thinking and how the process for the family piece is going. Again, thank you to the Canada Council for your support of this project. So last time I told you I was going to be working on the form map, as I call it, which kind of gives you a general view, gives the composer a general view of the form of the entire piece. Now, like most composers, your composition training, your composition style, your composition choices are quite often affected, or at least have been modified by your understanding of past composers. And for me, I've always had Bela Bartok as kind of the model for a lot of my thinking about composition and about the formal structure that he used for his compositions, and of course some of the traditional ones as well. Beethoven and Bach also did a lot of formulation of the way I think about compositional form. Now back to Bartok in particular. Bartok was a proponent of an understanding of what I call the psychological half point of arts, and that is in many things, and that's the golden mean. And the golden mean is an important mathematical and just general computational structure that we find in arts and in the universe in general. And it basically says that the halfway point is not at 50%, but it's approximately 6.618, which is what I call the psychological half point. So that for me determines part of my structuring of the whole piece. For example, the halfway point will take place at about 0.618. Now, I did mention that the composition itself would be about 5.5 minutes, so that puts it into, according to my calculations, the halfway point would be about 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Now, traditional form for music, say a sonata form, would have an exposition, then a development section, then a recapitulation, and some sort of coda. And each of these sections will be based upon a certain tonal center. In the music of Bartok, he still had not tonal centers, but what we call tonal axis. And I already mentioned what the tonal axis for our piece is going to be. It's going to be based on the chant, on the axis D, F, and G. So that gives me an idea of how the different sections of the piece will be focused on different tonal axis. So the first part of the piece is kind of an exposition and a development, and that will take about 3.5 minutes. And then after that, you have a recapitulation and a coda of some sort, which take you to the end of another minute and a half or so. And there's other golden mean calculations that go into where certain specific cadences and important events will happen. For example, the first part of the piece in D will take up 0.618 of the first section, so-called positive section, and the negative part of that first part of the piece will be the development section, and then that leaves the final minute and a half, which again will be divided up into a negative, what's called a negative, and a positive portion, some sort of recapitulation and a coda. The recapitulation, which is kind of takes some of the old ideas and brings everything all together in in a new way will be centered around G, and the development section is centered around F. So that gives you an idea of the tonal axes and the kind of the general form for the 5.5 minutes. Now inside of there we have our our background music. I've talked a bit about that already, which is the synthesizer track, which you already heard, which I did play through one of the other episodes. We'll have some percussion going on throughout that section. Some of the chanting will be in the background, as well as some different kinds of drumming going on as well. So that provides this 5.5 minute background. Then in the foreground we have the actual some more traditional notated parts for the trombone, the violin, the clarinet, the saxophone, some voice, and maybe some of the other instruments we talked about, the ukulele or something like that. So that goes into the foreground, and then again, we did talk about having a text for this piece, some spoken words, some poetry that was important for my father. So there'll be different text, as well as some actual voice sampling from some of the recordings my father did, which provide a third layer. So it's kind of like a layered counterpoint going on. We've got some background, some foreground, some text, which provides a nice counterpoint to the overall feel for this composition, which really is about my father and how his life kind of was embodied in family, in community, and in his faith, and how his journey will be shown in the journey of this composition. So that gives you a very brief outline of the form of the piece, and I'll be starting to plug in some other important details as we go along. The Bartók book I was talking about is the famous analysis of Bartók's music by Landvai, which really provides a clear understanding of his compositional procedures, and it's quite amazing. And of course, I've also mentioned last week a little bit about some of the creative processes going on, and one of my PhD advisors, Dr. Howard Gardner, wrote this book called Creating Minds, and in this book there's all sorts of interesting ideas about what's called modern creativity. So those are some of the things that are going on in my head as you try to get into the composer's mind, and I look forward to seeing you next time. If you don't mind, you can feel free to send this on to your friends, to post it on your social media, or just subscribe to the channel, and we look forward to more interesting things happening.